We are back for the UFC preview show with your boy Spencer Kite, with your boy Harry Powell, and with your boy Sean Denny. Before we get into the evening's action, Saturday night, June 25th, is when this card goes down. And you're going to want to get yourself protein into you for this one, lads. And there's no other place to look other than eatallreal.com. You see it flashing along the bottom of the screen. Head on over to allrealnutrition.com. Enter the code word SevereMMA and get yourself 15% off of these delicious protein bars, peanut butter, the best in the business. Eatallreal.com. SevereMMA, 15% off. Right. Let's get into it. Let's get into it over there. We have a voluptuous audience there that's mad to start laughing, and there might be a couple of laughs at a couple of fights maybe a little bit later on, but not the main event, which is an absolute banger between Arman Tsarkyan and Mateusz Gamrot. A fight that was described the worst main event for name value in the history of the UFC. Christ almighty, leave it alone. It couldn't be more wrong if you tried. We're going to tell you why this fight is good. We're going to tell you why these fighters are great. We brought in Sean Denny to defend your boy Mateusz Gamrot. He knew him about that man before any one of the rest of us here, and a lot of other people listening as well. Harry is going to break down some of the fights, and Spencer, as always, is with us. Let's get into it. Arman Tsarkyan versus Mateusz Gamrot. Okay, I'm going to start with Tsarkyan first. I saw Tsarkyan when he made his UFC debut, which makes me even more excited to see him kind of progress. What was it when he made his debut? A couple of years ago, maybe he was 21, 22, 23 when he came in and fought Islam Makhachev on his UFC debut. Now, we've talked time and time again about difficult debut fights. We've experienced it with Jai Herbert. We've seen it with Rhys McKee. But sweet Jesus almighty, Arman Tsarkyan got a tough one on his UFC debut. But you know what? He didn't do half fucking bad. He got in there. He lost. He lost the fight, but he scrambled like hell. He took very little damage, and that loss looks incredibly, incredibly good now against a guy who is going to be probably facing off for the title in his next fight. When I saw that, it's not too often we watch someone make a UFC debut and lose and get really excited about a guy. And that's what I was. I think I tweeted that night. I was like, this guy is going to go places. Just seeing his overall game at his age, how much he can improve. It was just amazing for me to see. Mateusz Gamrot on the other end, he cut his claw at KSW. I'm not going to wax too much about Mateusz. I'm going to send it over to Sean Denny to kind of let him give us a little bit of a background on Mateusz. And, a superstar who competed at the highest level at KSW, came in for his UFC debut and was defeated against Guram Kutaladze, who we seen last week. Lost a close split decision in that fight, but he's since got back on the horse, 3 wins in a row. Top prospect as well. I'd arguably say these two guys are the hottest prospects in the UFC right now, and one of them is going to have to take a back seat. Sean, I think it's just the perfect time to bring you into the preview show. An absolute expert in Polish MMA, travel over to each and every KSW event. And Mateusz Gamrot is someone who came on your radar many, many years ago. Just give us maybe a little bit of background in your experience of someone like Gamrot, his capabilities, where he comes from, where he trains, and why he's such a good fighter.
Yeah, no problem. So I first encountered sort of Gamrot at the big stadium show, KSW 39 in Warsaw. So automatically that's a baptism of fire. He's on front of 58,000 people fighting Norman Park to a close decision. So that at that stage he was still a bit raw. He was predominantly a grappler with a little bit of striking, but it wasn't really up to much. But Park gave him by far the biggest scare of his life that night. I think it was basically a 2-1 split on the cards. It was very close. So what he did after that was he decided he was going to work on his striking because it wasn't it wasn't sort of where it would need to be. And if he wanted to move up, he needed to get that done. He needed to be better. So after that one, he started that rivalry with Park at the very next event, which was the Dublin show. It was the classic almost brawl in the Tree Arena where there was an accidental eye poke. The fight got cancelled, and almost a near riot broke out. But since then, Gamrot has been coming on leaps and bounds. He's been working on the striking non-stop. The fight where he really started taking a jump forward was that third fight against Park. He really pieced him up on the feet. That was his second last fight in KSW. And then he took another progression forward in the next fight when he fought the current champion, Marian Zhukovsky. He pieced him up then for 5 rounds. Then after that, he got the call for the UFC. That was basically his farewell fight. So what he's been doing lately is he's been spending most of his camps over in ATT, which is interesting here because Tsaurkyan is also ATT. He's recently got his black belt in BJJ. So when he's not in ATT, he's in his home gym in Poznan called Cherveny Smok, which is Team Red Dragon. His main trainer partner there is the legendary Boris Monkovsky. And he also trains with someone like Nigella out of Bellator that we recently seen that most people didn't know, but is an absolute killer. He's training out of the best gym in Poland when he isn't at ATT. But when he is in ATT, he's training with the likes of Krzysztof Jotko, Dustin Poirier, Jorge Masvidal. He's getting some great work in over there, but what impresses me most about Gamrot in the last few years is since he's got to the UFC, and maybe a little bit before it, he's making huge jumps forward. Like from KSW, he was making sort of little bit of gains. He was getting tested on the feet, but then when the UFC was in his vision, he was jumping forward. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how that turns out now on Saturday night, because the queue to fight Tsaurkyan was not very long, and Gamrot was one to put his hands up.
Yeah, you have to give him the utmost credit here, coming in against someone like Tsaurkyan, an absolute a beast, and someone who's looking to really make waves inside the UFC and come into the ranks and push towards the title now. You know, he's been speaking about that. And, you know, I kind of gave my little 2 cents on Tsaurkyan, Spencer. I mean, he's someone who's been obviously on your radar, on everyone's radar, really, if you know what you're looking at for the longest time. And, you know, I think Sean did an excellent job in kind of giving us a background on Gamrot, and Tsaurkyan is just as good, if not better.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we're going to find out on Saturday, right? Is he where do these two shake out? Where do they match up, and where do they fit in the division? You mentioned off the top that it's rare we see somebody debut and take a loss and everybody comes away going, wait for this next one. We get maybe 1 or 2 of them a year, I would say. The last one that comes to mind, and it's much lesser scale, right, is David Onama against Mason Jones. Goes out, fights up a division, gives the former Cage Warriors 2 division champ hell of a fight, a good fight in his debut, drops down to make his featherweight debut and knocks out Gabriel Benitez. It was that kind of thing, especially when you remember that I think he was 22 or maybe 23 at the time when that fight happened. And so you look at that, and I wrote it today. The upside for Tsaurkyan is just stupid. Like, it's just ridiculous, right? He's this good at 25 to where he's number 11 in the UFC, number 12, I believe, at Fight Matrix, stuff like that. Like, he's right there in terms of one of the 20 best lightweights in the world right now. And he's 25. So wait till he's 28. Wait till he's right. We talk on this show every week. Every champion in the UFC until Yuri Prochazka got his title was over 30. And so that's sort of where these guys get to, and men and women get to, is you develop and you reach that point where the skill and athleticism crosses over and balances, and you get that Venn diagram with the experience and savvy and understanding. And those are your best years, is kind of 29 through 34, I would say. And he's got 4 more years to grow and learn and get better before he even hits that. And that's the thing that's exciting about this fight, because we do know, as Sean laid out, the quality of Mateusz Gamrot. He is terrific. Those last 3 performances, whether they were under the radar for some people or not, they were terrific performances. This is a big test for Tsaurkyan, and we're going to find out whether the kid is ready to go forward, or if he needs to kind of hold for a year or two in this little range that he's in now, getting a little bit more seasoning, getting a little bit more time with these veteran guys before he goes forward. And as you said off the top, it's going to be a banger.
Absolutely. Like, I think that's, just to keep on Tsaurkyan just for a second, I think the X factor in this fight, and something that makes me so excited looking at a fighter like Arman Tsaurkyan is the level that he's at right now. And like you said, Spencer, the room he has to grow, the mistakes he has to make to improve on. You know what I mean? You're not going to improve on mistakes unless you make them. He's still a very young fighter, and there still could be a couple of mistakes that he may make, which will ultimately make him better. That's the part of every fighter's journey. Mateusz Gamrot has had just one slip in his career as well, and that was only on his UFC debut. And there's reasons behind that. I'm sure. I think, Sean, you were saying he wasn't with his ATT camp for that UFC debut fight due to COVID. So, there was that. But, these two guys are coming, and they're at a crossroads both in their career. I believe that Mateusz Gamrot is more on a pivotal crossroad than Arman Tsaurkyan is, given his age, 31 years of age. He's got to really make it happen right now. Whereas Tsaurkyan, he can afford a little slip here. And there would be nothing wrong with him making a slip against a guy like Gamrot. Harry, I'm not going to ask you to go into details on and the nooks and the cranny of the fight just yet, but maybe, if you don't mind, just giving me your assessment on this fight overall. Why we should be excited about it, why it's not the worst UFC for name value of all time, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, if you think it's the worst UFC main event for name value, then what the fuck are you watching? Because these fellas both have fantastic name value, not just in the countries that they originate from, but also go and look at Arman Tsaurkyan in the last fight in the UFC Apex. The UFC Apex, you could usually hear a pin drop. There's about 17 lads sounded like 17,000 cunts in that fucking gaff. Don't give me no shit about name value if you're not watching the fucking fights. Why should we be excited about this? I mean, look, the skill acquisition and the modern metagame of MMA is about transitions, and it's about fighting in continuous phases. It's about being able to move between the phases of fighting in a fluid manner. Arman Tsaurkyan has that in absolute spades. Absolute spades. Mateusz Gamrot has a method of grappling that we don't see very often in MMA. It's an unorthodox method of grappling, and he's managing to put together a striking arsenal that complements that grappling really, really well. This fight is going to be fought on all frontiers, and it's going to be fought on all frontiers at the highest levels. You don't often see guys that are as well-rounded as both of these gentlemen in their specific skill sets. The reason why this fight is so important is because of the jeopardy it holds in the division. We could be looking at the next UFC title shot. We could be looking, the next guy to get into that bracket. We could be looking at a future champion in Arman Tsaurkyan. We could be looking, if everything goes right, we could be looking at a future champion in Mateusz Gamrot. I can't see it, but there's every possibility that could happen. I don't think that there is enough being spoken about the ramifications for the future of this division coming out of this fight. You've already mentioned Arman Tsaurkyan is 25. Look how good he is. Mateusz Gamrot is 31 and is still making leaps in his career. Very, very seldomly do you see a fighter, one, come into the UFC after reaching the pinnacle of a pretty big promotion like KSW, right? You don't then see him go like, lads, I've got lots to learn here. And then you go and watch him fight by fight at 31, making vast adjustments to his game. You don't see that, but we've got that here. This is just a fantastic fight to find out, one, what sort of meta are we going to see long-term in MMA? Two, where do each of these guys go in the division? And 3, Spencer said it best. Who's ready for this? Who's ready for this chance? That's what we're going to find out on Saturday.
It certainly is. And I think when we're talking about, I brought in about name value. I mean, what is name value? Like, is it because you don't know a guy? Is that name value to
It's
you?
because you're a fucking scrub.
Yeah, I mean, name value to me is when I saw him make Tsaurkyan make his UFC debut and he fucking went 3 rounds with Islam Makhachev. That me looking at it, I was like, this is a fucking guy I need to keep an eye on, and that's what I did. But okay, they're making their name for it. They're getting their UFC shot. They're whatever. They're going to star in the UFC main event in North America and be shown on ESPN. But they have developed a fan base and they have developed the following outside of North America. Spencer, you spoke very well on a podcast recently, kind of alluding to this fact that, you know, MMA exists outside of North America and fandom exists outside of America. I think, what was it, 90% of the UFC's audience right now comes from outside of North America. So, like, if anyone doesn't know, Sean Denny, about KSW and how big of a promotion that they are, could you kind of maybe give us a little bit of an understanding of how big a promotion and how much support someone like Mateusz Gamrot might garner in Poland?
Yeah, no problem. Like, you talk a lot about name value. Mateusz Gamrot is somebody who performed for KSW in front of a 58,000-seater stadium. That's the second biggest MMA crowd in the history of the sport. So more people knew Gamrot in that stadium than have probably ever heard of half the people on the roster at this stage. So KSW, like, they've gotten bigger this year, where they're doing 12 shows a year now. They're an international audience now. They're very big in Europe. They've got a streaming deal specifically with about 10 countries in the sort of the Baltics and the Balkans, and a little bit into Benelux, and with future expansion planned. So, and then they also have their own pay-per-view channel, kswtv.com. But they are doing pretty decent numbers there. In terms of the arenas they're putting on their shows, they usually have about at least four or five big shows a year. They play the same room up in Gdansk at the UFC do. They sell that out, no problem. They've got a 15,000, 20,000 seater in Łódź that they fill out every time. Gliwice, they sell that out 18,000 every December. So they're selling tickets to every event. This year they've reached more of an audience than they ever have. So they're probably I would have them easily top number 1 in Europe for promotions, and I would say that, and that's no slight on Cage Warriors. And the reason why I would differentiate the two is that KSW is trying to be the product and try to be the best in Europe, whereas I think Cage Warriors, I'd have them slightly below because they're happy enough being sort of a feeder system to the UFC. KSW want to be top dog, they want to grow, and they've just, the numbers are just going up and up and up and up. And this time in a few years, there's not a single soul that won't have heard of KSW.
Yeah, indeed. Very well said. And I mean, Tsaurkyan himself is rooted in many places in Europe as well and has garnered a lot of attraction. Obviously, born in Armenia, moved to Georgia and fought the majority of his career in Russia. So, you know, he's built up a fan base of his own, and you'd be foolish to think that nobody knows of him, because both of these guys are well known in Europe. Spencer, before we maybe go down to Harry for a proper breakdown of the fight, maybe give your overall assessment on what you think and what you're looking for in this fight on Saturday night.
So first, I just want to touch on the name value thing. Let's be clear, for North American audiences, when we're talking about North American media talking about name value, it's all about eyeballs. It's all about clicks. And in North America, to be fair, these guys aren't necessarily generating clicks on websites or pulling people to social media. But if that's how we're gauging things, I don't give a fuck what you think anymore, because it doesn't really matter. Because at the end of the day, what kind of fire IG posts they have and fire IG followings they have in North America doesn't do anything in the octagon. And as John Gooden jumped in and pointed out in that conversation a few weeks ago, these guys have a combined 600,000 followers on Instagram. So again, broaden your horizons, people. Look outside of North America. This sport is a global sport. Understand it and express it from a global standpoint. To what Denny's saying about KSW, it's probably the third, maybe second biggest promotion in the world. It's run better than the other North American promotions as far as I'm concerned. And people are going to be hearing a lot more about it because one of their biggest fighters right now, Roberto Soldic, is a free agent, essentially. And when he comes over, people like us and other people in the North American media are going to be tripping over themselves because he's a fucking monster, and you're going to have to pay attention. So just start paying attention now. Just get out of your own way and pay attention now, because these guys are fucking terrific, and you need to watch them, whether they drive traffic or bump your Instagram or your Twitter or whatever. Now, with that out of the way, the thing I'm watching for is the thing kind of Harry touched on, we touched on earlier, that I touched on yesterday on one question, and it's which of these two guys is ready just right now. It doesn't change anything for the future. It doesn't necessarily mean they can't get there in the future. And I would argue that even if Gamrot loses on Saturday, it doesn't change that much for him because he lost to a superior talent, a guy that we all agree has that potential to go forward. It just sort of maybe sets a ceiling for him, but he can still be a top 5, top 7, top 12 guy in this division, which is a great thing to be. But I really want to see if Arman Tsaurkyan's ready to make that run. As I mentioned earlier, we don't get super young guys that are ready to go into that championship class and really contend the way we did in the past a little bit as MMA was growing, as the UFC was just kind of flushing itself out, right? It's not that he's John Jones, but John is sort of the last guy we all think of that was in his early 20s and just walked in and was ready for that wave of talent that was there for so long. The UFC lightweight division is full of a lot of people that we are very familiar with, that we have a lot of experience with. And here's this 25-year-old that just might be ready to come and join that mix and start kicking ass. And I want to see if he's there.
Indeed, I'm really looking forward to it too. And I just hope, no matter what way the fight goes, and we're going to talk about the fight right now, I'll bring it over to you, Harry, maybe to analyze it a little bit. I hope that, if Tsaurkyan gets the win or Gamrot get the win, we need to know that this is a win against a top level guy, and they should be given the respect. And this is a fight to see who's going to get the next push in the lightweight division, who's going to be the new blood coming into this division. It's an excellent matchup. Lots of ups and downs, lots of nooks and crannies to kind of assess Harry coming into this fight. Where do you see this fight playing out? Do you see it being a grappling battle, or do you see it being a stand-up battle? That would be my first question to you.
Neither. It's going to be fought everywhere. There's no way that this won't be fought everywhere. Gamrot, as we know, has his favorite is the low single, right? And I think that that's something that we really haven't seen a lot of in MMA, specifically the way that he throws it. He throws across low single, which means that whilst most people would think that his back is exposed, he generally turns the corner quite well and either exposes his opponent's back or forces them to sit and play half or butterfly or whatever it is. We saw that against Jeremy Stephens, right? Jeremy Stephens tried to sprawl, ended up playing half guard, thought he was clever with a Kimura and got absolutely wrecked for it. And I think that, some of the ways in which Gamrot defended the initial Kimura attempt from Jeremy Stephens, you just see how high level his submission awareness, submission defense, and then submission counters really are. The way that he actually defended it was with his second hand, he had a Dagestani handcuff, meaning that the leverage that Jeremy Stephens could really, really talk through his bottom arm was essentially nothing because he couldn't move it significantly, right? That allowed Gamrot to put weight through Stephens' shoulder, readjust his feet, sort of find his knees out of the half guard, and then he's like, it's my turn now. And that's not a position that you want to be in with a guy as talented and as skilled as Gamrot, right? Just getting his black belt is absolutely ludicrous. Absolutely ludicrous. He's been a savage on the mat for a long time. He went to ADCC, won trials. You don't win European trials unless you are an elite grappler, specifically in the weight class that he was competing under, which is under 77. There are a ton of guys in there who are excellent. Now, at the actual ADCC finals, his first match was against Gary Tonin. These things happen in MMA. Like, there's not a lot you're going to be able to do. Even an elite level grappler, you're going up against a pure elite level grappler. No, I mean, obviously Gary Tonin's transitioned to MMA now, but at the time he was not. So, you know, these things happen. But for Tsaurkyan, you don't go in and look as good as you looked against Islam Makhachev. The closest we have seen Makhachev to being taken down, he got 4-posted 3 times in the first round. You don't see that unless you're a kid that has elite confidence in every area of your fighting. Go and look at him against Matt Frivola. He was happy to stand and bang. Look at the way that he transitions against Joel Alvarez. Both lads throw a kick. Tsaurkyan manages to catch the kick, find a hip, turn the corner, put him down. Then does, oh, you're a grappler? You're a jiu-jitsu guy? Cool, let's do jiu-jitsu and see what happens. I mean, Tsaurkyan has the ability to fight absolutely everywhere. My issue with Gamrot, and I think this is going to be a big thing in the fight, go and watch the Diego Ferreira performance and now tell me that Gamrot is as versatile and as willing to compete in every area as Tsaurkyan. He's not. He takes Ferreira down, and the moment the Ferreira refuses to accept the position and starts to use some jiu-jitsu to get back to his feet, Gamer just gets all of the way out. Confident that he can put himself back in that position, it feels to me as though he is asking his opponents to accept bottom position. Arman Tsaurkyan will not accept bottom position. He is going to scramble. He is going to look to get back to his feet. He is going to look to reverse. He is going to look to use the main principles of hip height and head height to put Gamrot on his back or take Gamrot's back or force him to wear his weight and tire. The other thing that I have negatively for Gamrot is that in the Ferreira fight, don't get me wrong, there was a ton of output, but by the end of the second, Gamrot was looking tired. Ferreira more tired, but go and then watch the Arman Tsaurkyan Islam Makhachev fight, which was just 3 rounds of absolute insanity, and at the end of it, Tsaurkyan looked like he had at least another 2 more in him. So I think those are the big factors going into the fight. We can go into the absolute nitty-gritties, but I think that, as an overarching method, is how I think this fight plays out.
Before I let you go, and I'll move over to Sean Sheehan next, I'd love to get his thoughts on the main event. Where's Gamrot going to find the weaknesses in Tsaurkyan's game? Or can he find them at all?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that he's going to need to be potent with his submission attempts. Something that we didn't see from Makhachev is we didn't see Makhachev use submission attempts to force positional dominance and to force positional changes. So I think offering a dilemma between, as Arman's getting up, you need to make sure that you're forcing him to work and choose between, you either get up, and you can get up if you want, but I'm going to hit you a plethora of times, or if you're getting up, I'm going to jump on a neck. I'm going to snatch a front headlock. I'm going to look to land some knees as you get up. I'm going to force you back into a clinch situation. Gamrot needs to be able to find methods to land offense in the transitions. The transitions is where Arman is the most dangerous. I think the other way he finds him is Gamrot is going to be the bigger man here. And I think he needs to use a bit of that big brother. He needs to use the beautiful right hand he has. He styles that right hand really nicely behind the takedown attempt. It's exactly the same setup, and he landed it beautifully on Diego Ferreira a number of times. So finding a method to force Tsaurkyan into biting on the feints, whether that be on the feet or on when it comes to takedowns, that's the way you get him guessing. And if you can make Arman Tsaurkyan guess, you take a tiny bit of that speed out. That's the way you get it.
I would have to respectfully disagree. I don't think anyone is going to get big brothered in this fight, to be honest. I think the two of them are fairly well matched. I know me and you had a conversation, Harry, about maybe who's going to be the stronger I'm interested to see that. I do think that Tsaurkyan does possess some kind of low-key strength, and strength can come in different ways. You don't strength your way out, but strength can come through scrambling, finding positions. I think that he showed that, someone going up and matching up against someone like Islam Makhachev, you do have to be strong if you're not going to get dominated. And I think he did show that in that fight. But, so does Gamrot. Sean Denny, talk to me. Do you feel that this is Mateusz Gamrot's toughest test of his career so far? Or do you think he has faced tougher in the past?
No, I think this is the toughest. It's very much a what have you done for me lately business as well. So this is Tsaurkyan has been there, done that, bought the t-shirt as well in the UFC. What interests me here is the biggest weakness I think for Mateusz in the UFC so far has been adjusting to 3-round fights. So his last 4 fights in KSW were 5-rounders. 2 of them went into the championship rounds. 1 of them went to decision. So he came in and he was used to just sort of conditioning himself so he'd be able to go to 25 minutes. But he'd spread it over the 5 rounds if need be, if he couldn't get the finish. In KSW, very rarely seen Gamrot tired. Whereas when he came into the UFC, I think the very first fight, the pacing, I don't think he sprinted when he should have sprinted against Kutaladze. Then, as well as Harry mentioned, he was a little bit tired in his last fight. But this changes here. It's a 5-round fight. This is where champions are made. Tsaurkyan has never been there yet. That's a question mark. He can either do it or he can't, but we know Gamrot can definitely do it. So if there's any holes to Tsaurkyan's game, we're going to find it out within those 5 rounds because nobody's ever stopped Gamrot.
Yeah, it's a couple of very, very good points there. And I think Gamrot should be looking at trying to bring Tsaurkyan into the later rounds, see what he's like. You want to force your opponent to answer questions that he doesn't know. And I mean, it's easier said than done. I feel for Gamrot, he's going to have to be super careful that he doesn't end up on his back and he doesn't end up with Arman Tsaurkyan on top of him in this fight, because we've seen in that Joel Alvarez fight, he can crack you with an elbow, and all it takes is one. He landed that one elbow on the bridge of the nose of Alvarez, and that was the fight done. Blood all over the place. That, Speaker's Corner came out today, and we talked about damage, and we alluded to us not talking about an elbow to the bridge of the nose that causes a cut like that is a fight-changing blow. And, when Tsaurkyan knows he has that and has the confidence, I think that Tsaurkyan, like Harry said, a young, confident man, is going to be going and putting himself in those positions. He's going to probably want to prove to Gamrot that, yeah, take me down if you want. I can hang with you down there. I can stay on top. I can be in your guard. You know what I mean? That's what young, hungry fighters want to do. They want to prove it to themselves and they want to prove it to everybody else. And I was listening to Tsaurkyan this week and he's talking, and that's the mentality that he's bringing into this fight. He wants people to recognize him now. He wants to be known. And he seems to be a guy that's pretty set in stone and making a good run at this title at this stage. And that may work out for him and that may not work out for him. But we're going to find that out on Saturday night. And I'm getting even little tingles here thinking about this fight, man. It's a really great fucking fight. And I cannot wait to see it. And, I'm like, I feel like I'm kind of leaning on Tsaurkyan. I do want to say Gamrot, a fantastic fighter too. And we really have seen his true potential in the last 3 UFC fights. Didn't look himself when he came in. Those adjustments that Sean Denny mentioned there, those are big adjustments that you have to make. New scenarios, new rounds, different level of competition, different questions being asked. But you know what? He's been able to answer all those questions in these last 3 fights. But he is facing the ultimate challenge here. And it's going to be an intriguing main event. I would have to say, win or lose, that Arman Tsaurkyan is a future champion of the lightweight division. And I don't say that shit too lightly. At this stage, lots of shit can happen. Injuries can happen. But I mean, a guy at 25 years age that has showcased what he's showcased so far and still has lots of learning to do, still has lots of developing to do. I just really find it so hard for me not to think and go out with my sword here and say that we're definitely looking at a future champion here in Tsaurkyan. So, I mean, if people want to disagree, that's fair enough too. But we'll see. Maybe I can go back. I'll reel back the years when it happens, and I'll toot my own horn. But I think we're probably all in agreement of that, really, aren't we? That we're Spencer. Maybe just give me your 2 cents on that. Am I getting too? Look, I have a tendency to get a little bit excited on here, guys. You know what I mean? I can get a bit excited.
He's definitely somebody that'll be in the mix there. Like, he's somebody that will be close. If he gets there or not is, all depends on myriad factors that we can't really predict. But in terms of what we've seen right now, how that looks to transfer going forward, absolutely somebody that at the very least should be in that. Like, he should be the next Islam Makhachev that just keeps going forward and gets into that top 3, top 5 position where, depending on decisions that get made, maybe he gets title shot, maybe he doesn't, but the skill is there to be in that mix. And it's there for Gamrot too. If he goes out and wins this one, it opens some eyes.
It definitely does. And it'll be exciting to see how that fight goes down on Saturday night. The main event, another decent contest between an old veteran and some fresh blood that's come into the welterweight division over the past couple of years, and Shavkat Rakhmonov, as he faces off with Neil Magny. I think first things first, fair, as Harry Howell would say, fair fucks to Neil Magny for taking this fight. The man just does not turn down fights. Never has, never will, and credit to him for that. I mean, he's coming in here against an absolute fucking murderer, in my opinion. And you know what? He can cause him problems too. And it's the perfect test for a guy like Shavkat Rakhmonov, coming in 15-0, 15 finishes. There ain't too many mixed martial arts fighters out there that I think Andy Hickey put out a stat. I think there's 4 fighters that exist in mixed martial arts with a record above 10-0 that have a perfect record so far. A perfect record being all finishes. Shavkat Rakhmonov is one of those guys. Harry, when you're looking at someone like Shavkat Rakhmonov, does he look to you like the real deal? Another guy, like we talked about with Tsaurkyan, that has an abundance of talent and has some room to grow into that talent as well?
I think so.
You're
I'm
getting
excited about
giddy
Shavkat Rakhmonov.
Getting giddy with excitement there. I see you there. Look at
I am. I think that Arman Tsaurkyan is closer to the finished product than Shavkat Rakhmonov is. And I say that knowing that he's 15 fights and 15 finishes deep. And that's why I'm giddy with excitement. I look at Shavkat Rakhmonov's game right now and I see holes in it. And those holes, maybe, I doubt it, but they're holes that somebody like Neil Magny, somebody of the veteranship of Neil Magny, somebody of the intelligence of Neil Magny may well be able to find. But you also then look at the plus sides of Shavkat Rakhmonov. You look at the range control. You look at the precision of his shots. You look at the lack of wastage in his application of strikes. You look at his ability to snatch submissions. You look at the ability to lay dilemmas down for fighters to make poor decisions. You look at his ability to overwhelm people with footwork and his ability to just stay in people's face and really fucking get into them. And you're like, well, fuck me. We've got a fighter on our hands, haven't we? You know, I think in this fight, the things to look for and the things that we haven't seen anyone really do to Shavkat is really put a pace on him.
Yeah.
He likes to have things his way. He likes to be the hammer. In the Colston Harris fight, he likes to be pushing his fighter back. He likes them to be behind that trident of the not the trident. I need to ask somebody in the UFC what the fuck they call the black lines, right? The tram lines. He likes to have his man slightly behind those final tram lines so that he can offer you. You go one way, spinning hook kick. You go the other way, I might hit you with a turning side kick. I might hit you with a right hook. It might be a clean right hand. It might be that I put you into a bit of a clinch situation, and if you overreact, I'll put you in a Uchimata, and now you're mounted, and it's my world now. His ability to force dilemmas, I think, is the thing that's the most impressive. But the thing, as I just touched on, the thing that I'd like to see somebody do, and something that Neil Magny could absolutely offer problems, is to try and ask him some questions about that range control. How about if I'm the hammer? How about if you're the nail a little bit? How about if you can't have things going your way in the front foot? How about if I do keep sticking this gangling long leg in your midriff? How do you like that? How do you like it if I check your kicks and I throw back some of my own? How about if I don't allow you to dictate this range in this pace? How about if I try and take you down a little bit? How about if we try and have a little bit more of a back and forth? Those are the questions that I have of Shavkat Rakhmonov, because in most of his fights, it's been pretty much one-way traffic, right? It's been pretty much guys are very concerned, and legitimately so, about the power, about the versatility, about what's coming at them, right? You look at the Colston Harris fight, for instance. When he gets into the clinch, he looks stronger than Shavkat, but he makes errors. And Shavkat's like, this is great, thanks very much, and ends up on top. And it's just causing big problems. But I think in Neil Magny, the thing that we have is we have the veteran. We have the guy who has all the knowledge. He's seen every style. He's been in there in the training room, in the octagon with all the styles. If somebody's going to find a way at this level to put Shavkat under pressure, it's a guy like Neil Magny.
Indeed it is, and I think that's what the X factor in this fight is for me as well, is to see how someone like Shavkat can handle a savvy veteran like Neil Magny, who's been in there in the UFC with the who's who of fighters, who's coming into this fight on a 2-fight win streak, good wins over Jeff Neal and Max Griffin. Now, beating Max Griffin in the last fight by split decision, Spencer, you're taking a massive step up in class when you're coming up here against Shavkat Rakhmonov. Give us your thoughts on Neil Magny. I know you had your article this week, an excellent article on him. You've spoken on here about him before. The type of fighter that doesn't get spoken about enough, and I kind of said it at the start where we were introducing this fight, a guy who just simply does not turn down fights, who puts himself and challenges himself against the very best. May not have been the most exciting fighter, may not have been the most skillful fighter, may not have been even the best fighter to fucking look at the best of times when he gets in there. But you know what? He knows how to get the job done when his back is against the wall.
I absolutely love Neil Magny. I think we've talked about it on here before. He is the most self-aware fighter there is in the UFC in terms of understanding, or one of them, in terms of understanding the weapons he brings to the table, his place in the division, and the things he needs to do in order to go forward. And that is taking these fucking fights. Like, part of this is he wants the challenge, right? He likes solving the puzzles and testing himself against the absolute best, which is admirable in its own right. He also understands that as a guy that's been in there for 26 fights and has some losses and hasn't quite gotten over that hump, but has been in the top 10 for the better part of the last decade, this is kind of where he fits. This is his range. This is his zone. You're the guy that's going to fight these up and comers. And it's why when Dana White's going out and saying nobody wants to fight this Chimaev guy, Neil Magny at every turn was raising his hand saying, I'm right here, and then beat Max Griffin and got the opportunity to actually put it out there on live fucking TV and say, anytime you want it, son, just call the UFC. They've got my number. I'm in. Dudes don't do that. So Neil Magny gets the absolute love and admiration for that. He also gets all the respect, all the flowers for what he's done. People will say, oh, well, it's longevity, and he's been around since Christ was a cowboy. That's the only reason he's tied George St. Pierre for the most wins in welterweight history. Great. Do you know how hard it is to be around in the UFC for 8, 10, 12 years and pile up that many fucking wins? There's a reason there's like 12 dudes that have 20 wins in the UFC, and that's it. Neil Magny gets a win on Saturday. He becomes number, I think it's like 13, maybe 14. Longevity or not, hasn't beaten the absolute best he's faced or not, great. Up until Michael Bisping had a miraculous run. That was literally who Michael Bisping was. And everybody loved Michael Bisping and had a ton of respect for Michael Bisping in terms of what he had done over the totality of his career. Now, I don't see Neil Magny going out and getting a come from behind, questionable kind of win over a former welterweight champion like Michael Bisping did, and then, catching Luke Rockhold on the stupidest day of Luke Rockhold's professional career. But I do see him going out there and offering those questions that Harry was talking about, and being the guy that tests a bunch of this stuff that Shavkat Rakhmonov has to answer. He knows it can't just be go out, throw the jab, move around the cage. He's been in the cage for more than 5 hours of fight time over the course of his career. There's tape on that. They know that's what's coming. So when we spoke for that piece you mentioned that's up on the UFC website now, he said there's got to be a different level of tenacity. There's got to be some different questions presented to this guy to see if he can figure out some stuff that I'm doing, to see if I can exploit some stuff that maybe I've seen of him doing. And that's what we're going to see. It is the perfect fight for both of these guys at this moment. Rakhmonov needs a win over a guy like Neil Magny to really go forward and kind of propel himself. And if Neil Magny is the first guy to beat this guy that we're all super high on, that stock goes up even more and that respect level goes up even more. And then maybe that Chimaev fight looks a little better too.
Yeah, indeed it does. I'm curious to get your thoughts. Maybe we'll ask you about the main event, Sean Sheen, a little bit later. Thanks for joining us. I know you've been having some pretty bad internet issues over there. Start paying the bills, Shawnee. Start paying the bills over there. Come on.
Patrick Sheehan, he gave me like one of those TP link things. I was going to buy one because my one's kind of acted up. He's like, "Oh, I have one here. I can borrow this." And I got to 98% on like a 2 gigabyte WeTransfer, and it's fucking stopped dead. And then got to 98% again, and it stopped dead again. So I almost threw everything out my windows. But I'm here now. I said I'd drop into you. I was planning to drop in for like 5 minutes, and then everything died. So I said I had to come back again. But you're doing a great job, lads. Fair play to you. I've been listening a little bit.
Give us your thoughts on the co-main event, maybe real quick, Sean. What are your thoughts on Shavkat Rakhmonov? We spoke very highly of him. Perfect finishing rate, and in with a wordy test here. And like Spencer said, it's kind of the perfect test at the perfect time for both of these guys.
Yeah, I think it's, I'm sure Spencer's talked about Neil Magny, who will take anyone at any time. And, the next guy who is the next best guy that everyone thinks, he will take him on, and fair play to him. There's only a very select few fighters like that. And I feel like we need to respect them. Myself and Harry did a podcast about wins and losses not too long ago. And I think that's something we need to have more respect for in mixed martial arts, but that's a different story, I suppose. In this one, I feel like it's going to be a closer fight than maybe people would think. I think Neil Magny is going to put up a big fight. Sometimes Magny, he comes into a fight, you expect him to put up a good fight, and he doesn't, and he ends up losing pretty, overwhelmingly, or however you want to put it. I just have a feeling this is not going to be one of those fights. And I just have a feeling it's 15 fights into Shavkat's career, still very early to be fighting someone as good as Neil Magny. And I feel like Magny will maybe not... Look, I suppose the fight we look at is Burns and Chimaev. And look what Burns did to Chimaev in that fight in terms of putting up a battle. I don't think it'll be the exact same. I don't think it'll be as much of a war just because of both of these styles. But I think Magny will put up a good battle, and he won't get walked over here, and it'll be a longer fight maybe than people might expect. Although, I don't know, maybe people do expect it to be a long fight. But I think Shavkat will win the decision here. That's what I'm kind of going for. I think he will win long. Maybe even Magny pull, get close to winning a round or something like that. But overall, I just think that power difference might be a little bit too much for Magny to overcome. He's at times good at using his length, at other times not necessarily. I just think that that kind of, I'm sure Harry has spoken about it here, but kind of that step in kind of JCB power that that Rakhmonov has at times, or he'll just shunt you. I think that is going to be tough for Magny to deal with. And you add to that, obviously, he's unbelievable wrestling. Magny's probably not going to take him down or dominate him in the clinch for long parts of it. Going to be a tough fight for Magny to win. But I think a fight where he can win areas or can be competitive in areas and take it longer. But it's a great fight. I know me and Spencer talked about it a few weeks ago. I think it should have been the main event back then. I'm not sure if the Tsaurkyan fight was actually on the card at that time, against Gamrot. But I think this would also make a great main event. This is the sort of fight I would love to see over 5 rounds, honestly. But having said that, very, very fun fight. One I'm definitely looking forward to.
Probably smart of the matchmakers, maybe as well, not to put it as a 5-round fight, maybe to the benefit of Rachmanov. I'm curious to see the striking exchanges here. I do feel that there's going to be a massive speed difference between Rachmanov and Magny. Sean Denny, what's kind of your overall assessment of this co-main event? How do you see it going?
I sort of think Neil Magny's going to come in with a bit between his teeth here because he didn't get the Shimaev fight. So I think he's going to come in very, very motivated. We know he's got cardio for days. He can wrestle his arse off. He can grind you down against the cage. But he has to be perfect. Because if he lets if there's any little gap in there, Shavkat is just ruthless and he'll take it. But I do think I agree with Sean Sheehan. I think it's going to be a 3-rounder. I think Magny is going to be his usual tough self. He's going to want to show, saying, "Look, don't ever overlook me again. I'm here for real. I'm a real fighter. I'm top level. Don't doubt me. I'm here to make all your prospects have a miserable time. If you even think about doing this again." But ultimately, I think the overall talent that Shavkat is, I think it'll be enough to get the win. But I do think he's going to get the biggest test of his life.
Yeah, I think it's. I kind of echo those sentiments as well. I think it'll be a tough fight, and if Shavkat can come in there and get Neil Magny out of there, well, fucking hell. As I say, we're off to the races. But those boys will be in there. They will be throwing some leather in the co-main event. Harry, I'm going to send it over to you. Look, we're going to briefly touch on the rest of this card. I'm going to get your thoughts, Sean, if you have some time. Maybe we can round off the podcast with a few thoughts on the main event for you before we leave. Harry, I'm going to send it over to you. Is there? Look, we're not going to name out any other fights on the card. There's a couple of fights on the main card and on the prelims. Not great fights, to be honest. Let's be real. But is there anything?
Get him, Spencer. Get him.
How dare you disrespect Shailan Nurdemeki?
Sorry, Shailan. I appreciate. Well, look, I'm going to send it over to you first, Harry. Is there anything else on the card overall that's sticking out to you, or anything that you want to speak about?
Yeah, give me all of Umar Nurmagomedov versus Nate Maness. We're going to find out where Umar Nurmagomedov really is. If he goes out there and whacks Maness, we're like, okay, I see you, bro. Let's see a ranked fighter, and let's have that. Maybe we put Umar in a fight night main event and see what he's like over a 5-round fight. I'd be happy to see that. I'm looking forward to see whether Rodolfo Vieira's done any treadmill work in his life over the last 6 months.
That kind of has potential, Harry, to be the fight with probably the lowest body fat ever, with him and Chris Curtis inside in the cage. The two of them absolutely yoked to the gills with muscles. It's going to be definitely an interesting watch to see who gasses out first.
Damn right. And my bet, put the fucking house, remortgage it, put the house on fucking Rodolfo Vieira, lads. One double leg in and it's done for that man. So yeah, those two fights I'm very, very interested in. And look, I think Raulian Paiva versus Sergey Morozov is probably the sleeper for fight of the night here. Two guys that go in and, you know, chuck hands a bit and do a bit of wrestling, do a bit of submitting if they can, like just guys that leave it all out there. So, you know, those are the 3 fights I'm looking at.
Nice. Spencer, if I could pick your brain about maybe some of the other fights on the card that Harry hasn't mentioned, is there anything that's standing out to you? Anyone that we should be keeping an eye on this card?
So I still want to pay attention to Thiago Moises. 27 years old. He's 4-4 in the UFC, but if you look at the 4 guys he's lost to, it's Makhachev, who we've talked about a bunch, Beneil Dariush in his debut, Damir Ismagulov, who went out and got a victory last week, and oh, by the way, is 24-1 for his goddamn career. And then the last one was Joel Alvarez, who is a very good fighter and who missed weight for that fight as well. So he's a 500 fighter in the UFC, but he's lost a really great competition, and he's only 27 years old. So as we talked about off the top with Tsaurkyan, there's still room to grow. We've seen a lot of very talented fighters, people that are in the championship mix, especially in this division, that had a similar start to their career, that struggled in those biggest moments. He's somebody I think can still go forward. I'm looking forward to seeing the big fellas get after it to close out the prelims. Like, you want to give me some Carlos Ulberg and Tayfon Chukwi, maybe beating the hell out of each other. Maybe we see it go. Maybe we get a quick finish, or maybe we get another kind of slog where it's like, all right, these guys really are just, 3-minute, 4-minute fighters, and we can be done with them. But I'm always interested to see that question. And then Jinhyu Fry is just the strongest goddamn woman on the roster, and I'm looking forward to seeing her manhandle Vanessa Demopoulos.
Indeed, it should be interesting to see all those breakdowns. Like I said, I'm going to go to you, Sean. We kind of waxed lyrical about the main event. We spoke highly of both fighters and their potential. Please give us your thoughts on Arman Tsaurkyan and Mateusz Gamrot, maybe as separate fighters, and then how they match up, please.
I won't go too far. I'm sure you've done a great job of it. I went back and watched the Joel Alvarez against Tsaurkyan fight there before we came out. And that ground and pound is something that just stands out so much to me. Like, I know he split him open, and it's very easy that stands out because he made shit of his face. But I feel like they're very different fighters while being similar, if that makes any sense. Like, I think Tsaurkyan is more of, his name sounds like, the Tsaurkyan, like that.
I think a street fighter when I hear his name.
Me too. And that's what he kind of reminds me of. You're standing there and I say, whoop, there's like a big spin out of him and a big high movement, where I feel like Gamrot is more of like your steady, technical, basic fighter, but I mean basic in a very, very complimentary sort of way. And that is interesting to see how it wins, because I was watching Gamrot versus Jeremy Stevens. Obviously, Jeremy was fighting a couple of weeks ago, and I watched back that fight, obviously, to prepare for that fight. And the way Gamrot kind of just manhandled him. He doesn't look like the strongest guy in the world, but he just, like, Jeremy Stevens is not a weak guy by any means. He's putting on a bit of weight as well to get up to 155, and he just manhandled him and made it look so easy, and then just submitted him in seconds. Like, you have one guy who looks really strong and one guy who is really strong. Both guys are really strong, but one guy who is really strong might not look it. One guy who's a very good power striker who doesn't maybe look it, against another guy who looks like a power striker, but I think is actually probably a little bit less maybe of a power striker. And then, but I'm sure Sean, Ninny and Harry and all of you have spoken about their ability on the ground and everything like that. It's a matchup I find very hard to pick, honestly. I'm just looking forward to sitting down on Saturday night or maybe Sunday morning and watching this one. It's very good. Can I just quickly say as well, and I know you mentioned it, Nate Maness against Umar Nurmagomedov. I fucking love that fight. And Maness is one of these guys that kind of flows under the radar a little bit, but he's beaten some good fucking guys. He beat your guy Tony Gravely in, and you don't beat Tony Gravely unless you're good. And okay, Nurmagomedov is the guy, and we're all expecting him to go here, but to be the guy, you have to beat the guys on the way up. And Maness is one of those guys. And also, last thing here, you're talking about like brick shithouses being in one place. Myself and Yoel Romero are going to be in the same room there in a couple of months. Jesus Christ, what's gonna happen then? What's gonna happen?
Is Nate Maness a Sheehan bet this week? Because as an underdog, if you got a couple of bucks you don't give a shit about,
he is my flyer
today,
for the week.
He was plus 600 where I would be laying some bets.
He is my flyer for the week.
600.
Plus, I got him plus 650, my flyer for the week. So, absolutely, you could bet someone to win round 4, submission or something, and it'll be like plus 600 or 700. This guy just to win straight up plus 650. I think he should be like plus 300, maybe plus 350, something like that. Agreed. I would favor Nurmagomedov without a shadow of a doubt. But I think anyone who's gone back and watched him knows his quality, and I think that plus 650 is a crazy, crazy, crazy price.
Yeah, I do too, because like we said, he beat Tony Gravely, who is an exceptional wrestler on top of everything else as well. So it'll be a good test for Nurmagomedov, and I'm excited to see that. That one, it will be on the main card, and that kind of rounds us up for the preview show for this week. Thanks to Shawnee Sheehan for dropping in there and after all of his internet issues down in West Limerick there. No 5G down below for poor Shawnee, unfortunately. Thanks to the Prince of Poland himself, Sean Denny, for dropping in to talk about Mateusz Gamrot. Thank you to Spencer Kite and Harry Powell. As always, go and follow Harry Powell at BJJ_Harry Powell, Sean Sheehan at Sean Sheehan Ba. At Denny Rants is where you can find Sean Denny, and at Spencer Kite is where you will find Spencer Kite. The Keyboard Kimura sign up, Severe Spotlight, all the Cage Warriors previews coming this week. KSW, Sherdog for Shawnee, Owl Triangle for me. Hit that in the top right hand corner. You will get access to the Severe MMA Patreon. Head on over there for some excellent content, Speakers Corner and the likes. And don't forget to head on over to All Real Nutrition. Enter the code word Severe MMA. Get 15% off these beauties right here. Get some. Put some health and put some goodness in your body. Don't be unhealthy like myself. I want to eat this bar now, but it's my last one, so I don't really want it. But that's the first world problems that I'm facing right now. But don't cause yourself any problems. Head over there, get 15% off all Real Nutrition bars. Enter the code word Severe MMA. Get you some. We'll be back next week to talk some more UFC fights. Is it the pay-per-view card next week?
Sure is. Ian Gary is back as well.
Jesus, and Ian Gary is back. We'll be doing a good solid preview for that, guys. I can't wait. We'll be back next Wednesday and probably every Wednesday going forward. From now on, we'll change up the day, just a day earlier, get it done. But we have an action-packed UFC card next week, a pay-per-view, Israel Adesanya, Jared Cannonier, and a bunch of other fights on that card as well that we will talk about from top to tail. Thank you to everybody for listening to us, joining us as always for the UFC preview show here on SevereMMA.com. My name is Ian O'Neill. Over and out.